So glad you could join me. My name's Rachel Veltman and this is a Tartan Zebra creativity video, and today we're going to look at drawing with 1 point perspective. So I hope you've got a pencil, paper, ruler and a rubber, and we're going to start. Here you go. So today the drawing is being done by a 13-year-old student of mine. So it is showing you that this is perfectly possible as a skill, whatever age you are. So what you need to do is start with a dot in the middle of your paper. That is called the vanishing point. And the vanishing point is where all the lines that go back into the distance, as if in your image, will go back to. So my student here is drawing a road and they are adding a pavement either side of the road. Now you could say it looks like a triangle, but actually if your eye starts to read this in perspective, it will look like a road disappearing right onto the horizon line. Make sure you're using a very straight edge or a 30cm ruler. There we go, there's our road and our pavement going back into the distance. Now, all the buildings that you're going to draw alongside these pavements will be blocks, almost like a kind of very modern city. So we're going to do lots of verticals now, going up alongside each side of the road. Now, my student's drawing in a horizon line. A horizon is useful to put in because you get the sense then of what is in the distance, but you might well cover that up by the time you've drawn all your buildings in. So draw it lightly. In fact, all of your drawing, I would say, don't go too dark, just in case you need to rub some of your lines out. Brilliant. So let's continue putting in the vertical lines which will delineate all the buildings going down, this time on the right hand side of this road. In a minute we'll go for the left hand side. Keep your verticals really perpendicular to your horizon, so they need to be at 90 degrees. No sloping verticals please, otherwise it will start to look a little bit like a city in an earthquake with the buildings sloping. So we've done one side of the road. Now my student is putting in the lines for the left hand side, because this is going to look like a street going back into the distance with buildings either side. So keep putting your verticals in. It's quite a simple exercise. Don't worry about knowing exactly how tall they need to be at this stage. They're just really a sense of the buildings going back, and the buildings might get closer together as well as they get further back down the road, so you could make your verticals a little bit more closely packed as they get further towards the vanishing point. So this is the magic bit. This is where you start putting in the tops of the buildings. All the tops of the buildings and the edges that go back into the distance will always go back to the vanishing point. So line up your ruler with the vanishing point and your verticals, and you will find you can start to draw in the tops of your buildings. And it will appear like a diagonal line going back to the vanishing point. Now each of the buildings can be different heights. They don't have to all be the same height, because that would make a very boring town or city. So you just pick the height on the vertical that you want the building to be, and take that back to the vanishing point. So this one now at the back of the line of streets is quite a tall building, and so actually the diagonal will be sloping down towards the vanishing point, and that will make it appear as if it's a tall building in the distance. And you can do exactly the same as long as the diagonals go back to the vanishing point either side of the road. We're now going to just watch the drawing develop a little bit more, so we might speed it up a little bit where the student's working, and then I'll talk you through what's been created so far. Okay, so now, brilliant, we're going to start adding in the front faces of the building. So far, the diagonal face of the buildings have been drawn in, but obviously the front face of the buildings won't necessarily need to go back to the vanishing point. In fact, they don't. You have to draw in horizontal lines now to show the kind of the faces of the tower blocks that would be looking straight towards you, so they're not tilted into the distance at all. So using horizontal lines, you can join the tops of the diagonals to these horizontal lines to create the faces of those buildings. And you can see how my student is constructing these here. So just with horizontals and verticals all the way down their line of buildings. And you can decide whether you want that building to be shallow or deep. It just depends on your design of your street. So they could be very deep buildings, almost going to the edge of the page, or they could be very thin buildings. So you just need to decide how your buildings are going to look. Some buildings will stick out at the top of the street, and some will be hidden by the other buildings. So you kind of need to gauge that as you draw it. So watch my student as they now work up their horizontal and vertical lines to describe the front facing planes of the buildings on the left hand side of the street, and then we will speed up the video to show you how that works also on the right hand side of the street. Okay, so the buildings on either side of the street are now drawn in. What my student is now going to do is start to add windows and doors as if the blocks of flats or apartments are actually a little bit more detailed. So it's exactly the same skill. You're still using the vanishing point for the tops of the windows and the bottom of the windows. But the sides of the windows still need to be vertical. So you just need to be making sure you're using the vanishing point to add these details. Watch carefully what the student does as they add these details. And obviously, as the buildings go back into the distance, these details will be getting smaller. Okay, so the next stage is adding windows as if they are on the front facing planes of the buildings. Now, if you are on the front facing plane, you do not need to use the vanishing point, because these windows are not going back into the distance, if you understand what I mean. So these will just be simple squares and rectangles, no diagonals, just facing you, so that you get that other side of the building as if it's facing straight onto you without any disappearing into the perspective of the work. What we're going to do now is just watch the student complete this piece. I've got it on double time, so hopefully it won't take too long, and you'll be able to see all the little details being added which we'd like you to do in your piece. So enjoy the rest of the video, enjoy the music, and I hope that you find this really instructive and enjoy having a go at this amazing technique yourself. One thing you can do once you're finished is obviously add colour, add shading to make it look more realistic. This drawing will finish just as a line drawing, as a plan if you like, before you add any of that. So all the best with your attempt, and I hope you get really skilled at this 1 point perspective exercise. See you soon.